Welcome to Local Yokel, Idaho. My name is Tyler, and as many of you may or may not know, races are going on across the state. One of those races is the Canyon County Prosecuting Attorney position. Today, we have an interview with Christopher Boyd, who is running for that position. He began his career in 2013 as a prosecutor in Canyon County, and then moved to Adams County in 2018, also as a prosecuting attorney there. He also serves as the National Prosecutor and Law Enforcement Advisor Council for the Conservative Political Action Committee, or CPAC. Along with serving with the Idaho judicial system, Christopher has also served our country in the Idaho Army National Guard with the 116th Cavalry Brigade Combat Team in Iraq. Mr. Boyd, thank you so much for serving our country and for speaking with me and the audience about this and joining us here today.
Thanks so much for having me, Tyler.
Yeah, I know we've talked a little bit before this interview, kind of getting to know you and stuff, but for the sake of the viewer, I know you are actually a native. I know we're a little rare here in Idaho at the moment. Where exactly in the state did you grow up in?
I grew up in Marsh Valley, so that's about 20 miles south of Pocatello.
Very nice.
Yeah.
I've explored it a little bit.
Yeah, I what can I tell you? I started there. Obviously, went to high school there, and then when I graduated, I went on a mission to Santiago, Chile, where I served for 2 years and learned to speak Spanish, and came back and went to Utah State for my bachelor's degrees. I have a bachelor's degree in political science and another one in economics. And from that point, I got married to Laura, who has put up with me for now, where are we at, 21 years now? So pretty good. Worked out pretty good so far. We have 5 kids together. And so their ages, at this point, their age is 19. It's the oldest, and my youngest is 9. So I have 2 girls and 3 boys. And so what can I tell you? I'm giving you the full, a more in-depth version, Tyler, than I've given anybody else. But I went to college, and then after that, I went and did a master's degree, which was in international relations and economics for Johns Hopkins University. And I did that in Washington, D.C. for a year, and then another year was in Bologna, Italy, which was an interesting year to live abroad with my wife. And at the time, we had two sons. And in the meantime, I did Iraq, right, which is the year and a half. That was an interesting story where we left. When my first son was born, actually, it's a funny story because Laura was pregnant with our first when I got activated. So we're doing all this, this training up, getting ready to go kind of thing. And I came back on just like one last leave before I went to Iraq, right? It was supposed to be 1 week thing. Well, I stressed her out so much, I sent her into labor, and she ended up with preeclampsia. And she ended up having a C-section. So I got an extra week of leave, out of that.
Right.
But I left my firstborn son in the NICU. He was in the neonatal intensive care unit, and Laura there in the hospital with him. So that was pretty crazy. That was dramatic. But we did make it back, obviously, and not all of us did. And so we're, if you think about, that's been a big part of kind of my life, is just serving. I just want to be part of something bigger than yourself, And so that was something that was important to me. My dad had been, obviously, I say obviously, you guys don't know this. My dad had been in the active duty Army. And so I was born an officer's son, and I had always been that had always been a big thing for me, since the time I was a toddler, seeing my dad in his uniform and helping him undo his boots when he'd come home. And so,
so mainly his influence kind of got you involved there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And so anyway, I'm kind of bouncing around a bit. So when I came back from that, I finished out my bachelor's degrees and then went on the master's degree programs that I was previously trying to tell you about, out of order. So sorry about that. And then after that, I came back. Yeah, right. Yeah. So after that, Tyler, I came back and I went to University of Idaho College of Law. I went knowing I wanted to be a prosecutor in the state of Idaho. Like that's what I wanted to do.
Did you feel called, or was there a particular reason you felt that?
Yeah, that had always been one of the kind of things that I've been thinking of. When you're young, you don't always know what you're
Yeah.
exactly you're going to do. I'm going to end up doing this, doing that. But it was always something public service related that I really kind of felt drawn to. I just wasn't sure what that would be. Whether it would be something. Um, but law enforcement related stuff was always interesting. And I find um, there it was a very rough economic time, and right as I graduated from my master's degree, and that would have been in I want to say 2009, right? And so things had been kind of crashing.
Yeah.
It was pretty rough, and so all the really high paying jobs weren't out there anyway. And I looked around and I was like, I always thought about going to law school, and I always wanted to be a prosecutor. And this just kind of like it called to me, and I went. And law school was terrible, and uh, I don't recommend it. But
You're like,
but
here's my sales pitch. Don't.
do not go to law school. Well, unless you really have something in mind that you want, that you really truly want and care about. But don't go to law school just for no reason, because it is not it is not fun. But but when I got my first internship, it actually was up in Sandpoint for the city prosecutor up there, and I did little traffic
Oh,
infractions,
nice.
and that was the first. Yeah, it was the first point where I'm like, oh, I'm happy with my choice. I can do this. This is my
You're feeling fulfilled with your career. This isn't
yes,
just paying a paycheck and I'm obeying someone. No,
yes,
I feel fulfilled. I feel like I'm doing what God has called me to.
yes, and I knew that. I mean, you should have seen how. So anyway, I got my. That was in an internship, and then and I worked for the United States Attorney also um, as an intern. So I interned both times with prosecutors, and then I got my first job at Canyon County Prosecuting Attorney's Office as a prosecutor, as a deputy prosecutor, and that was my life's calling, man. I just that 5 years. Not quite 5 years. Sorry, more like 4.5. That I was there at Canyon County, and that was Canyon County is such a great place to learn to be a prosecutor, because there is a lot of cases going on, and you are going to get thrown into the thick of it really pretty quickly.
Right? Swim or be eaten.
Yeah, I mean, at the time I was I'm looking at Ada County, I'm looking at Canyon County. I'm like, I got to go to one of these two, right? Got to go to one of these two.
Right.
And the way they sold me on it was, you're going to get bigger cases faster here. And I thought, cool. And that is what
Sign
happened.
me up. Where's the dotted line?
Yeah, yeah. And so
Right.
it was really a great refiner's fire to come here. And I in the time period I was here, I tried 38 jury trials, which was a lot for that time period. I mean, I think I'm at like 55 at this point. So since then, I didn't. I mean, not at that same rate. It's just that's a Canyon County rate of trials, and you're just doing a lot of jury
Right.
trials, fighting really hard for cases. I did everything from misdemeanor domestic batteries to to and DUIs and things like that, all the way up to murder cases. And I've done since then. After I left there, and I've handled pretty much every kind of criminal case that you can think of, and uh, learned it all here in Canyon County. Loved it. Loved working with the police officers here. Have a really great relationship still with a lot of those folks from Nampa PD and Caldwell PD, to the sheriff, Canyon, Canyon County Sheriff Kieran Donahue, who's I've worked with closely in the past, and I've always admired
Right.
his leadership as far as his law enforcement work. He's been very dedicated to it, and I've always appreciated that.
Originally, you were there in Canyon County in 2018, right? And then you went over to Adams County for a little bit, and you were kind of there during COVID season. And then you've kind of come back. What was the original reason kind of to go over there and then kind of come back?
I left actually, in between. I went to a civil law firm, and I worked in some civil litigation work for just a little while, and then I was like, I got to get back into prosecution. So I was actually even talking to my old boss and thinking about going back, because I just missed prosecution so much. And then Adams County came up, and it came up and that was the elected prosecutor position. So it's a much smaller county, but it was being the guy, right? So I went up there, and I loved it, and that oh that was such a great experience. And you get the opportunity to be to be in charge of all of the decisions with a little lower stakes in terms of the size of county,
Right.
right? So I couldn't have imagined better training, because I'm doing a budget, but it's not like the same size at least, and I've got
The
employees that
anvil
want
that's
want
gonna hit you on the head if you mess up isn't quite
yes,
as
yes.
massive.
And so I had, one part-time deputy that would come and help me try cases and things like that, and would do civil work. And then I've got a staff, member, a legal assistant, and well, that was it was great. I love working there, and I love living there, and I love the people there. It's wonderful. Honestly, I recommend it. Highly recommend it. But what I'll say is, I always did miss working with that group of people. And so when I heard that that Brian Taylor wasn't going to be running again, I was obviously super interested. He suggested it, um, and I called up, the sheriff, and I called him and spoke with him for a while, and he encouraged me to come down and run. And I thought, well, you know, knowing that uh, knowing that I'm kind of more a little bit more from the Liberty wing of the party, if you
Familiar?
will. Yeah. Well, and I'm not going to say I'm not going to try to put him in a box or anything, but a lot of the people that he
Right.
supports tend to be on a little other side, and so I thought that hey, if he can see past any of that and see me for my professional capability, and really he wants me because he knows he's worked with me on big murder cases before, then I could
Right.
I should be able to get this done. Um, but oh yeah, the other thing I was going to talk to you about was the COVID thing, because you did ask about that. Uh,
I know I do have that at some point later on, of
oh
course.
great. Well, let's talk about it then. So anyway, I came down here in
Well, I mean,
January, and I've been here. I moved down
okay.
here just in preparation for this job, and so it's been a sacrifice. We've come down. We left something that was great. We loved it, but we are so happy. I'm so happy to be. I'm so excited to be working with these people and in this office. Many of these people, not just some of the more seasoned prosecutors, but also the more seasoned detectives, and I mean, I walk through these offices and I see these people that I've worked with. I've fought shoulder, I've stood shoulder to shoulder with them and fought for, uh, fought for big cases with them. And so, listen, it was always something that I was very interested in someday when I was qualified, coming back and doing, because I loved working with these. Look, I love the county, I love the people I work with. I love the sheriff's office and the police officers. These are people I know. I've fought for cases with them. I've fought for victims with them. Like we have a pretty long history, and I'm just excited to be working with them again. It's going to be really cool.
For those, especially me, I mean, I know a little bit about it to a certain degree, but could you explain for those that are kind of unfamiliar, what office, the specific office you're running for, what it's involved in the legal sense? Because obviously people understand there's the city council and then there's the
Mhm.
planning and zoning board, and those people are elected to write laws for that certain local municipality. But what does your position do for the county that you're running for, and how does it affect kind of people's everyday life in Canyon County?
So there's two major missions of the prosecutor, and one of them is on the criminal side, and that is being the lawyer for the essentially for the police officers. Although really you are pretty separate and independent, but you work with the police officers to create a case. In layman's terms, that's you create the case and then you present the case as the prosecutor. And so, as an elected prosecutor in a bigger county, you have a lot of deputies who go and they try all these trials, or they work through the judicial system representing you, the people of the state of Idaho. So, um,
Right.
and against defendants who have been charged with crimes. So that's one thing, and that's kind of the more obvious one when you hear prosecuting attorney. That's probably what most people think
Right.
of. The other half of your job, and it is really fully half, is you represent the county in a legal sense, and so you advise when requested the county commissioners and other elected officials throughout the county. Any of the elected people that you're talking about, the assessor, um, the treasurer, the clerk, when they have legal questions, they're calling up your office and they're talking with you. And you, as the elected prosecutor, you can help really um, make sure that that's a good relationship. But it's a relationship of trust, and it's one where your advice will be heeded. So It's a pretty important one actually
Okay.
because it's kind of like behind the scenes, but that's the stuff that'll really cost you if you give bad advice. It'll cost the county millions, and so it really really does matter. Although it's not as fun as just going after bad guys, so to speak.
What would be the particular reason that you felt called to run for this specific office?
What I would say is this: I I love to prosecute. I love to be a prosecutor, not just because you get to put bad guys away, but because you also get to show wisdom and mercy and compassion when it's needed, and you do that on behalf of the people of the state of Idaho. It's just such an honor to fight for people who are downtrodden, to lift up the hands that hang down, to kind of to do it. It does feel like God's work sometimes. I mean, if you're doing it the way you're supposed to be doing it, which I mean, prosecutors who sign up to be prosecutors, generally they're doing that because for the same reason that police officers sign up to be police officers. We really truly
Right.
care about the work that we're doing. And so there's no more rewarding work. There's no more higher job. Like prosecutors have the highest job satisfaction of any lawyers. Lawyers are notoriously depressed. It's a rough job, but being a prosecutor is so rewarding, but it is also hard. And I mean, it's got so many difficulties and turmoils, and just you have to carry the pain of these people, and the frustrations of dealing with sometimes either judges or other lawyers, and it's just a battle. But I love to be part of that battle. So I felt called to do it, but once I had it, I I love that work, and it's just I care about it so much, and so the opportunity to come back to Canyon County and to lead the team of prosecutors that I care about, and to help that office be more successful than it ever was, um, to remind people what the mission of the prosecution is, and to reestablish kind of the relationships that we should have with our police agencies and with the sheriff's department, as well as with our elected officials. It's a rewarding opportunity to be able to come and kind of get back and get that going. And here's the thing: I love it too much to not work my butt off doing it.
Yeah, I know I can be guilty of that as well with, this different stuff that I could spend hours and hours on it and then I realize, "Oh wait, there's other parts of life. I'm so blessed that the Lord has given me something that's fulfilling and
Yeah.
enjoyable, but you have to have that balance." And, you alluded to it earlier, but to kind of make it a little bit more succinct cuz, in a conversation things can go all over the place. What would be the specific qualifications you'd like to point out for voters that make you qualified for this given position?
I'm an experienced prosecutor. I have over a decade of experience prosecuting every kind of case you can think of, from murder cases to sexual assault cases, and about everything in between. And it matters in this case, because you really want someone in these kinds of positions who knows and understands the intricacies of prosecuting, because you've got 35 other prosecutors in this office, and you need to make sure that you understand how to lead them, and you can't lead from the behind. You can't. And that's where my military experience and training comes in, my leadership experience there, leading a team in a combat zone in Iraq. That Look, I know what it takes to lead, and you don't stomp your feet and tell people you're a leader. You get in the trenches and you lead. You lead by example. You lead with love. You show people how much you care about what you're doing, and they'll care about it too.
Right. I swear every business, or I mean, it's not a business what you're going into, but any workspace, there's kind of the ways things are done. There's the ethos, there's the
Hmm.
culture, whatever term you want to say it. And when you know that, you can move so much quicker on it. But transitioning into another point there, independent of like qualifications, you can have all the qualifications, but what would you say is your thesis or doctrine for those cases? What's the thing you're kind of approaching them from? And there'll be kind of a second question to this, but I think you can already guess where it's going.
Sure. So I think it's one thing to be competent, and you need to be competent at this job. Believe me, if you're going to be able to get justice for people, you better darn well be competent. But also, you need wisdom. Wisdom in prosecution is so key. Um, Not every case needs the book thrown at it. In fact, there are a lot of cases that there's you have a boneheaded kid is what you have, for example, right? and what they need is accountability, right? But in a much more in a much different sense than being, locked away and key thrown away. But you got to be able to do both kinds of cases there. So there's wisdom that you need to have that, and then at the end of the day, there's this job requires moral courage, and that means standing up for what's right and what's constitutional. That means you standing up and saying when something is not constitutional, standing up and actually having a backbone and stopping it when you can. And you have a unique position to be able to do that.
Right. And from that moral standpoint, I know on your website it says that in faith is what is described as one of your guiding principles or bedrocks. I mean, you've given one of those, which is the Constitution. You've given the example of wisdom being that. But I would argue, oftentimes the question is then where are you getting that wisdom from? Is it the world's wisdom or God's wisdom? Since I know we're both believers on that, how does that faith aspect of your faith apply to your work being a prosecutor?
In every way, in every way. And, I mean, so um, wisdom is a function. Really, it comes from the Lord, really, and I think that it's come from experience, yes, but also I think you pray for wisdom every day, and you pray that you get it right because these are momentous decisions we're making every day. So you look to the Lord in every thought, and you pray, and when it comes down to knowing what to do in a hard case, you pray then. It's interesting you say that because I have a good friend who's in the middle of a trial right now, and she just got through a very difficult. She was texting me while she was trying to get through a very difficult time on an evidentiary issue, and it's a very momentous case, very momentous. It's a high level murder case, and she's facing down this hard evidentiary issue where she's very worried that the judge is going to make the wrong call. She's calling me or texting me, and I knew it that the exact moment. I'm like, get down on your knees, pray. I'm in my office alone, right? And so I'm able to sit. I knelt down and I prayed. I said, offered a quick prayer. And I know a lot of other people were at the same time because she was pretty well. She was super calm. She said she felt complete calm come over her as she was making these arguments. And I mean, I know she made the right arguments, and they were successful, and so that was awesome. That's kind of just one example, but like there's a lot of, I mean, that is, oh man, there's high stakes, and I don't know how you get through it without that. And we see some really tough
Right.
things besides. I mean, honestly, I've seen worse things being a prosecutor than I ever did in Iraq. I mean, you go out to crime scenes and you see these, and you go to autopsies and you see all of these really terrible things. And sometimes they're people. I mean, I stepped over bodies of people that I knew and loved and thought were nice people in New Meadows here for the last murder that I did 6 months ago or so. And yeah, you're stepping over their bodies. I mean, it's traumatic and it's hard. And I think without your faith in God, um, I don't know how you do it.
It's not a moral grounding.
Yeah, and how do you even get through it, man? I mean, it's just so people people end up turning to drink, or they turn to drugs, or they turn to God, and so that's
Right.
that really is the bedrock of that's what I look to for comfort anyway.
Right. And then the way that you're informing or deciding how you're going to lead a case probably comes from more of a biblical background of the principles as well, I assume, right?
Yes, I think there's some. I'm trying to think of the scripture that I have pinned on my wall, and it's a little late. It's past my bedtime. It's all 9 o'clock and everything.
Yes.
So,
We're recording
but
a little late for the audience out there.
dude, but dude, it's what does God require you but to walk humbly and to do just to love mercy and walk humbly
Right.
and love mercy, and that's a good reminder for a prosecutor because we get so we're fighting for justice so hard, but we have to remember to love mercy too. Like there's a time for
Right.
that. Now, that's not your particular role, right? Generally speaking, like generally that's for the judge, not but you still need to have the discretion, right? You need to be
Right.
wise. Don't hammer people when you should be showing them some mercy. So it just, and I look, I think you have to, you look at the facts, you debate them with your colleagues, and you come to the best resolution you can, and you do what feels right in your heart. That's what my mentor always told me.
Right, right. And I think it's a good thing that, sometimes we want a universal statement of you do this or you do that. We want a one size fit all. And sometimes you need to have certain principles, as I like to sometimes joke about it, that you have like lighthouses and you use those to kind of calibrate the direction you're going because you're not always going to have a clear path, but you have those mile markers to kind of guide you, those certain principles that you hold to. And I know one thing that has definitely been a principle for our republic has been religious freedom. With your duties as being a prosecutor, what would that involve? Protecting religious freedoms or just freedoms in general? And are there examples where you've done stuff with law enforcement where you have been involved in maybe cases where that came up?
Well, it doesn't come up a whole lot. It does come up occasionally. And so, I mean, the one thing that really comes to mind, the last time that it really came up for me was in 2020 when the governor issued a lockdown order. And at the time, it didn't have any kind of, when it was first issued, didn't have any kind of exceptions for going to church or anything like that. And I, it asked for us to charge people with misdemeanors if they did not comply. And it was a scary time. People were afraid. I understand that.
Right,
I'm certainly, I was worried for my loved ones too, and I'm not I'm not without compassion, but I also was,
right,
I'm also kind of bound by my oath and by my gut and by my understanding of the Constitution, and so I do not believe that the government may uh, stop people from going to church, um, for example, right? And so, whether or not you think you can or not, the Constitution cannot be suspended. There is no suspension of the Constitution allowed in the Constitution, and that
right.
was put forth by our forefathers, who really were pretty inspired of God, in my opinion, and to protect us from that kind of thing. But those protections only really exist so long as people on the ground are willing to actually like do them, right? Actually enforce them.
Affirm them, stand up for them.
Affirm, yes. And so um, uh, I wrote a very public letter to the governor asking him to rescind the order. I was very respectful. I don't think I still do not malign his motives. That's not where I'm at on this. But I looked at it and said, you can't do this. And I will say that I think it was the next time he issued the order, instead of rescinding it like I had hoped he would do, he at least did make exceptions for people to go to church and things like that. So there was at least some changes uh, with that,
Right.
and that was I mean that was very public, and it was boy, I got death threats. you know, I mean it was pretty crazy, and I was just little old Adams County prosecutor. But your elected prosecutor really can stand up for you and for your rights. And in the same time period, um, we had the Biden administration come down and try to force people to take the vaccine, the shot, and try.
Right.
I mean, look, which is a medical decision, and it should be your decision. It's morally, it should be an adult person's own decision. And I don't mind people trying to inform them, but trying to force them. Uh, when Joe Biden made the decision to try to throw people out of work and say you can't be employed, which he tried to do that through various different legal means, all of which were illegal, and eventually were all defeated. But there were people that were being thrown out of work, and that happened in the state of Idaho,
Yeah.
and it was beginning to happen all over the state of Idaho. State
I
legislators
know many
tried to.
friends.
Yes, right, right, and state legislators tried to do something about it, but not enough of them would hadn't had the moral courage to do it. And so Little Adams County did like what some other states had done. Montana and Florida come to mind. They had both written laws that said it will be a misdemeanor and it'll be a crime if you discriminate against anyone on the basis of their medical decision to take or not take a vaccine. And so Little Adams County um, I had, I was asked by the commissioners, and they were so supportive, and I drafted that ordinance, and that or in Adams County it was illegal. We passed that, and it was illegal in Adams County to discriminate. And interestingly enough, 2 years, 3 years later, after the fact, when the pressure's kind of off, Idaho has now passed a law that has superseded that ordinance. Has now passed a law that does the same thing essentially. And so I'm grateful they did that. But of course, at the time when the moral courage is needed, um, it's often kind of
Yeah.
lacking, from some. But we have so many great. I mean, you think of the people that stood up in our
We do.
legislature and tried. That was cool.
Well, that would probably be one of your greatest professional accomplishments there. Are there any other ones you'd want to highlight through your career being a prosecutor, either there over there in Adams County or in other areas?
Well, those two things are. It's funny because those are things that I'm I'm proud that I would stand up and do it. And I think that that's one of the easier things, though, in terms of like professional capability, right? I mean, writing a letter, drafting an ordinance, that's not that huge of a thing. But the things that I
It
really,
takes a little backbone with that one.
at least you have that, and that is so needed. But I look back on the big cases that I've worked on over the years, and I think of the murder cases that I've tried, and those are the ones that I'm really that I feel as a prosecutor the most kind of pride in, because you put so much work into them. I mean, hundreds or thousands in some cases of hours, preparing and then
Right.
getting ready, and then you develop these relationships with the families of the victims, and their lifelong relationships. They're always a part. It's like almost like family, almost, because you forge these relationships, and it's cool. It's sad in a sad. I mean, it's obviously terrible and sad, and it's hard. But when you finally get the murderer put away, and you finally get that amount of justice done, and get them some peace, that just there's nothing that beats that.
Right. Bringing those to justice when wrong is done and the ledger is corrected, right?
Mhm.
I mean, for any person, I would argue personally has any inkling of righteousness and wants the good to be done, all of us should strive and desire and want that to be the case. And you get that even more palpably as a prosecutor than some people. Some just have to suffice ourselves with, in the Lord's timing, that person who cut me off in traffic, we'll see how that happens. Its own thing,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But you get to experience a little bit more palpably each day.
It's a really cool. It really is a privilege. It's a privilege to be able to fight for those kind of cases. But it's also, man, it's a cool thing when I see out in the community, and some of my good friends are people that are prosecuted, and they just need accountability. Isn't that crazy? I
Right.
had one gal not too long
We're
ago
all
look at me.
sinners, desperately wicked.
Yeah, well, yes, and don't we love the prodigal son story? And aren't we all? Haven't we all been in one of those sons' position at one point or another? And so it's cool to see someone else's redemption story. And so yeah, I was in the gas station the other day, and I'm like, oh hey, how are you? It's a gal working in the gas station. She's gotten back from her rider program, which was in prison, but she'd been struggling with serious drug issue, and uh,
Mm.
you know getting her into drug court and things like that. And then seeing her she's been clean, and seeing her be clean for a long time. That's really cool. I mean, it's just watching people when they can get through that difficult. They're those people. It's, it's one thing when you hurt someone, when you rape or kill, or those are things that, we're just beyond the pale, and
Right.
we're we're going. You're going to prison, right? For as long as I can put you
Right.
there, because I got to protect the rest of society from you. But there's just so many others that it's so good to see the Lord work in their lives, and redemption, and change. So accountability with redemption, man. That's what's cool about being a prosecutor.
Right. And I know kind of the last point, but to kind of give the yin and yang, we've talked about kind of like the positive side there, one of the things, some of the things that you're very proud about that you've been able to do or accomplish. Is there any that stick out to you that are your greatest like disappointments or frustrations? Because every job has its bad days and its frustrating points. Is there a particular one with yours that you can think of?
Yeah, I can think of two things actually. There are two times where, I, and I was young. I was young as a prosecutor both times, and so I don't want to get probably don't want to get too factually specific. But one time, someone lied to us, and and I say lied to us as police officers and prosecutors, and represented that a court order was a certain way, and that their former spouse had rights to them. And we had in Idaho we have custodial interference cases, which are I found to be very fraught because a lot of times people are not telling the truth, and not a lot. I mean, it does happen, and so I ended up
Right.
having and it was due to this person lying, but that their former spouse was arrested. I was the one that wrote that, and it was based upon that person lying, And as soon as I found out that the court order was not what they represented, I mean, they produced the court order, but there was a newer one that we didn't know about that gave the custody back of the kids to this other parent, and so what they were completely innocent, and they were jailed for overnight, and that feels bad. That feels bad. You don't want to do that. And it was a good lesson to me as a young prosecutor to look very, very skeptically at those particular kinds of cases, right? And I'm still to this day very skeptical. I look very carefully at those. And sure, I can't do anything about it when people lie. I can't magically know the right answer. But there are
Right.
people that want to use they want to use the judicial system as leverage in their divorce or something like that. And yeah, that can't stand. And so
Less
all the
justice,
more
more of a
reason,
game.
yes, they use it as a game. And that's not all. I'm not categorizing everyone who comes in with that kind of a case as doing that, of course. But just
Right.
you asked me about what my biggest failures were, and that one, yeah, that stinks. And you'd think that it would be acquittals. You'd think that when you talk, I mean, I've tried a lot of cases, which means I try hard cases
Right.
as well as easy ones, and hard cases sometimes you lose, and um, you learn from those. But I don't look back on any one of those and think, man, that's my worst failure. I mean, the the jury system is here for a reason, and people might be morally guilty, as in they actually did it, and God knows they did it, but they may not be guilty in the system's perspective because we have to get beyond a reasonable doubt. It's the highest burden out there, and it should be because we do not want to get the wrong
Right.
guy. We never want to get an innocent
Right.
person wrapped up. So yeah, so it's not really those
Right.
cases
And
at
I
all.
know,
It's really when I screw up and I'm like, oh, and I say I screw up, but when I feel like I was part of some injustice instead of justice, and we have a lot of power. So when we do it,
yeah.
we it's a matter of time. If you're an experienced prosecutor, it's a matter of time until there's a mistake, and your mistakes cost people freedom for a time at least.
Right. Right. And that's where, I mean, there again, it's good to have that biblical underpinning because we as humans we're fallible, right? We make mistakes, we make errors. But if we're basing our knowledge, our faith, our guideposts, right, in something outside of ourselves, something that's independent, something that's eternal, then the hope is that hopefully the Lord will give us the grace and the strength not to or maybe lessen the level of the impact of those areas when we do fall and fail.
Yes, and we learn from them, right? And so I look back at those. There's a couple of cases. There's two that I can think of, and I think that's the whole time in the decade plus of experience. But I look at those, and those, man, they inform my decisions every day, right? Like I look more carefully.
Right.
I'm not casual when it comes to reviewing cases, and and yeah, prayer is a big part of it, and asking for discernment. Can I Please give me the gift of discernment so I can tell truth from error.
And I mean, with that, we got the judicial system and a little bit of a hard pivot, but we'll see if we can make it here. I know something that I've heard you talk about at public events, and we've even talked about a little bit. And I've heard it from other people around the state that are in the legal system is that you've expressed a desire to reform Idaho's judicial appointment system and the way that that works. For those like me that still are kind of learning the nitty gritty of how that works, and probably the audience as well, how currently is the judicial vacancy process currently applied in the state of Idaho, and why have you spoken about wanting to change that?
Well, we have a de jure versus de facto, right, system. And so de jure meaning what's actually written on paper, and de facto meaning the way it actually works. And so um, what is supposed to
The
happen? De
letter and the
jure,
spirit.
the letter, right? What is supposed to happen is that judges are supposed to be elected. And it says that in our constitution and our laws. It's pretty clear about how it's supposed to work. But there's a special circumstance made for people when they do not resign during at an election point, right? And so there's an appointment system. Well, what has happened is that appointment system where you go. It depends on whether you're a magistrate or a district judge. But for a district judge, for example, they interview privately without any real oversight by the public. They interview with a judicial council. Three candidates are then selected, and they're sent up to the governor, and the governor appoints them. And the folks on the judicial council are appointed by the governor plus the Supreme Court justice, the chief justice of the Supreme Court, so is also on that judicial council. So it's kind of a
So, I mean, to back up to try to, if I am understanding you correctly, when that person or that vacancy occurs, you have a committee or board, which is made up of usually, um, I don't want to say lawyers, but other attorneys that's appointed by the chief Supreme Justice for Idaho, right?
so they're appointed by the governor, and
Okay,
they're appointed by
that
the governor,
committee.
all except their plus one of the people on the committee is the chief justice of the Supreme Court. So it's called the
Okay.
judicial committee. So this committee picks three candidates and then sends them up to the governor. The governor then picks from among those three. And I'm not kind of critiquing this process. I mean, you've got to have a process to select that someone when there's a vacancy. But I do think that it's probably not just probably, it definitely is the case that that is supposed to be the exception, and instead it's become the rule. And so I don't know that I know what the answer is, and I'm not proposing to be the savior of the judiciary or anything crazy like that. But I do think
Well, it's
that
better to start somewhere, right?
yes, I do think though that we have very very little at this point, very little democratic influence upon the judges, and so they for example, you might have a judge that serves in one part of up in Adams County, right, but that lives down in Canyon County, and that is not really uh, can't be tossed out on its own election just by Adams County. It'll have to be the whole district wide. So there's all kinds of um,
Checks and balances.
yeah, there should, or there's supposed to be, right, and what would be, I think that my only point that I think that I'm trying to make here is that in our Constitution there is supposed to be an election system, and that should be the appointment system should be the exception. But instead, what we have is the exception has completely swallowed the rule, and all of them retire in the middle of their terms, and are actually asked. At least, and I had a judge tell me this that was up on this judicial commission, and he was specifically asked if he would be willing to resign in the middle of his term. So there, it seems quite deliberate that we're trying to now make that happen. And I understand the idea, which is that we need judges that are qualified, and we're afraid that the electorate may not get those qualifications right. And so there is some that, I mean, that, and that's not a stupid thing to say. I mean, that's a legitimate concern. And I'm not pretending like I know what the answer is, but what I don't like is that we have taken this exception, made it the rule, and we have not had a thoughtful conversation about what should the law actually read, how should we actually select judges so that there is some sort of um, democratic oversight, so that there is some sort of input. And I don't know exactly what that looks like, but they passed a law recently to try to help at least push things back a little bit, which was to give judges that retire an extra, I think it's a $25,000 bonus if they will resign at the end of their term. And so I think that was just passed into law. So the legislature did good with that one, but
Do you know if that's a House bill or Senate bill?
I'm not sure. Um,
Okay. I might be curious to
yeah.
go look it up for myself for the
Oh,
viewers. So I was just curious because that'll narrow down my search a little.
yeah, and that I don't know if it remains to be seen if that'll be enough to kind of like push things back enough enough towards the Democratic side of things. Of course, there's a balance between that and how
Right.
much do you want of that, or how much do you want in more of a Republican form of government. But we definitely want some Democratic influence on the judges, I think, and that is the
Right.
way that the law was written. So it's kind of like I don't like thwarting the purposes of laws.
Yes. Well, like we've talked about in this interview, you have the letter of the law, which is what it actually says, and then there's the spirit. And generally, we're aiming to have the spirit of the law upheld. And I mean, as you mentioned it also earlier, the fear of the electorate not being able to maybe vote a qualified person or whatever else in, right? Um, I think a lot of that just comes down sometimes to public knowledge because
Hmm.
bef- before only like a year or two ago, I didn't even know that was the way judges were chosen. I just thought like, hey, there's a vacancy for a judge, and then the city was looking for it. That was a really understanding who's being elected, being involved, and who those judges are, and who's representing, and who's applying that law. Because you might have the best laws in the world, but if they're not justly with wisdom, right, and prudence being
Yeah.
applied, then it's not going to go too well.
Yes, and it really is true when there's not meaningful representation in selection of judges, then that even becomes more problematic, right? Because you're like, well, why is why do we have somebody that was appointed essentially and then was never challenged, and they very rarely are, making some decision that's very very momentous and that maybe doesn't, in your view or mine, follow the spirit of the law. I don't see that a lot, by the way, in my personal doings. I think that, especially in my judicial district, I've been pretty pleased with the way that judges work, and I have generally
Right.
favorable views of almost all the judges that I could think of. But there should be some more meaningful input. There's got to be a way where we can put where we can put out the qualifications of the judges, and we can educate the voters on that kind of thing, and yet still allow them to kind of talk about the things that the values, right, that we do care about. But it's tough because people want to just they prefer. I think some people within our system would rather just do a pure kind of selection system and kind of cut out the voter entirely.
Yeah, I not quite the American way. There would be my simple sentence on that to cut the voter out. What would you say if you know? Could the public do to help push forward efforts to reform that? What way could people help with that? Because I know if you're trying to pass a bill about abortion, right, you can help with sponsoring it or reach out to your senator and
Mm-hmm.
move that ball down the road. And here on Local Yokel, we've talked about that a lot. But with the legal side of it, it's kind of its own beast sometimes. What would be something you could say to the viewer that they could do to maybe help with that issue or move the ball forward?
Well, if you're interested in that, give me an email. Shoot me an email at Chris at boydlawoffice.org. That's my private email, Chris at boydlawoffice.org. Because I'd be anyone who's interested in kind of looking into that. I would love to kind of um, help with get them involved with their local legislators and things. Um, because those are the people that you got to work with on this kind of issue. Obviously, this isn't something that's really a prosecutor job necessarily, but the prosecutor does
Right.
have a good insight into it.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. And here again, I know you kind of alluded to it that you weren't quite sure, but if you had a magic wand, right, what would be your first guess or direction maybe to go with trying to solve that concern or issue with that?
So I think what they've done right now is a good start, right, to provide incentives. But I think that what you need to do is, this is what my opinion is, and it's not, take it for what it's worth. But I think that we have to create I think that we need to severely create some sort of mechanism that limits the appointment process, and then
Right.
makes the election process more informed, and so that we could take some of those elements of having the information out, in a way that's nonpartisan, because we don't want partisan judges either. So I think what we need to
Right.
do is be able to inform the electorate with, so I think probably paragraphs that end up going underneath either their ballots or in the voter guide. Essentially, I think there should probably be a state vote. This is just my opinion. So probably should
Right.
have some kind of state voter guide that talks about what their qualifications are, that keeps the judges their selection process from getting overly political, right? But also
Right.
gives the voter the ability to actually discern something meaningful out of it, right? So there are things that only lawyers know, right? Another thing that I think would really help is to compartmentalize what the judges do. And there are a lot of lawyers that are really good at criminal law, and they're terrible at civil law, and they'd be great criminal judges, but they are maybe deterred from becoming a judge because they would have to do everything. And boy, they're not good at the one thing, and vice versa. There's people who are really good civil attorneys who make great judges doing civil work, but then they're not very skilled at making on the fly evidentiary calls or something like that in the middle of a jury trial, which is a totally different skill set. And so
Right.
I think that it's high time in Idaho, I think. And boy, this is Chris Boyd's opinion, and don't take it for what it's worth. I'm not the next governor or
Grain of
something
salt,
like that,
people.
guys. So this is just one caveman's opinion, but
Oh,
I think
come on. An educated one at that.
well, I can tell you what I think from my perspective in the system, and I do think that we need we need we need to allow, and not that every there in rural areas, this you need judges that can do everything, but in places like Ada and Canyon, I think it's really good. It would be really good to have judges that do just specifically criminal, and judges that do specifically civil work, and I think that they would both be better, and the judges' lives would be better as well. So, and that would help fix a lot of these
Right.
issues too.
Well, I know one of the trickier things, even for the people like me who to a certain degree love to research stuff, right? It's been so hard trying to research and find things about that judge and how they voted and the way they've handled it and the perspective and how they've
Hmm.
actually just done in the
Hmm.
position. But unless you know of one, and if you do, please share. I haven't found a really good resource like that when trying to research judges for elections.
No, and some states have judicial watches, right? I mean, nationally, there's a judicial watch organization that focuses, I think, on federal judges and things like that. But you don't have a lot of that at the state level, especially not at the Idaho, state level. So it's I don't know exactly what the right answer is in terms of how that kind of organization should be run or anything, but certainly there's got to be a better way than just us looking at names, hundreds of names of judges that we don't even
Right.
know, as voters. And unless you're actually working
Right.
in the court system, you have no clue whether they're great or not or whatever it is. There's got to be a fair way to get people some actual information. And I don't mean it would be great if you could see what people's typical sentences are on certain kinds of cases. If you could parse that data in a fair way, which that would be a difficult thing to do by itself. But certainly, I think some effort's got to be made.
I know one of the cool things that I've seen recently, I discovered this, and for the viewer, and actually, I think one of the gentlemen that watches the show, hi out there, recommended this to me, is that at a national level, there's this group that had an idea to with the advent of more of these AI systems being able to transcribe stuff really quickly, and then large language models are really good if you're just like, hey, I'm looking for these terms, tie it between all these recordings. It does an amazing job at that. Where they took all the different recordings from like at the national level, things with the Supreme Court or things with Congress or different stuff. And you can go to the website. I can link it down in the description, or if someone comments, I'll make sure to get it to you. And you can like just search a term, like you could search Idaho and you can select at like the congressional or whatever else, and it'll pull open all the video
Mm-hmm.
files of that given thing where that term occurs or that thing comes up. It'd be interesting if they did something similar with that with court things, because I assume to a certain degree those are also recorded, that then voters could be like, okay, let me search this judge and then I want to see these type of cases or this type of case, and they could go watch some videos of how was the judge ruled or what was their final statement or something on that. But here again, I know I'm not talking to a person that can change that right now, but I think it'd be an interesting idea.
Boy, yeah, that AI stuff is really going to change our lives in all kinds of ways I didn't even think about. But that's a good point. If the AI can parse the data and quickly find um, words and phrases and things like that out of a court file, you might be able to get to the kind of information you know that the public needs to know. it also is, I mean, on the other hand, you're like, oh, if you make one mistake as a judge, and you can sit 20 years on the bench, you say one darn thing wrong, and you're going to look like a moron for everyone. So that and if you could just imagine, the AI thing kind of put this all under a microscope in some really kind of
It really does.
frightening ways too. So uh, I got really mixed feelings about that. Of course, I think as probably all of us do.
So with this race, and if you win, wh- what would be your vision for Idaho's judicial system, or with Canyon County? What would be your particular aims? What at the end of your term will you hope to have achieved if you got your whole laundry list right?
So I don't have a grand plan to change the judiciary or something like that as the Canyon County prosecuting attorney.
Right.
But I'll tell you what I do want to see is I want to see a Canyon County that is safe and that is prosperous, and I want to see a Canyon County prosecuting attorney's office in particular that is motivated, that has people who love to work there, and I know there are some already, but people who are motivated and just thrilled to come to work and do their very sacred, awesome job every day. And what that means is that we we get justice on all these. We focus most of our time getting justice on the big cases that really matter. We
Right.
get rid of cases that are stupid, and that are, they happen, man. They do. They really do. And part of your job is weeding through and getting rid of the cases that are stupid. Um, so we focus on wisdom and professional abilities and work. One where we have a teamwork, and we have a uh, a camaraderie and the power of working together that just makes it just a joyful, awesome place to work. One where people remember the love of the job that they came in for. And so that is, if you people come in like that, they love the work, they love the job, they love what they're doing, they're going to do great work, and that will lead to, yeah, it'll lead to all the you know high conviction rates on bad cases and things like that that really need to be tried, really need to be fought.
Right.
And then and wisdom and redemptive accountability, shall we say, for people who need that. And there's a lot of people like that. And then on the civil side, which is not to be forgotten, and one of my big goals is to restore civility between uh, the other offices, and that so I mean, starting with the police officers and working hand in hand with them and restoring the kind of cooperation effect that to some extent has been eroded over time. Um, Restoring that respect with the other agencies, and then also restoring that on the civil side with the commissioners and with the what no matter who they are, no matter what side of their political aisle they came from. I don't care if they're Democrats. Like, we need to work with people, and we need to make they need to know that when we give them civil advice, we're not out to get them. We're not out to make political hay. We're giving them the best civil advice we can, the best legal advice to help them get whatever policies they are trying to get enacted. We're not going to usurp their role. We're not when they're trying to govern, which is their job, not mine.
Right.
My job is to help them get it done in the way that they're trying to get it done. In the most, I have to give them. I mean, legal. It's got
The
to be
most
legal.
just way.
Yes, and legal, right? I've got to say, hey, this is what you can do under the bounds of the law. But I should not
Right.
be. They should not live in fear that I'm going to be using anything against them politically at any point. They should have full confidence, at least in that duty of loyalty, in the sense that you have from any attorney that works for you. And so that's a huge thing that has been
Right.
it's really missing right now. That's got to be fixed. And then the trust with the law enforcement's got to be fixed. So those things we can do that. There's some really great people to work with there, and I'm excited to put that to work for them.
With that said, is there anything specifically you want to plug as we close out the episode here?
Yeah, I would just remind us, of um, just for a good reminder. We lost a deputy in Ada County a couple weeks ago, and it's a good reminder that those people are out there laying on the line for us every day. And there's a lot of kind of like pushback and discontent towards police officers. And I've always held police officers to a high standard, and there have been times when I've had to even turn them in, and they didn't get to be police officers anymore. That does happen, and that's a real thing. But the vast majority of these guys, um, they're doing this job because they love you. They love you as their fellow citizens, and they're putting it on the line. And at any different point, at any given point, could they could end up giving the ultimate sacrifice, like Deputy Bolter did just a few weeks ago. And so it's a good reminder to us, that I mean, give them the support and the respect and be kind, and they're not always perfect, but if they screw up something, we'll fight them in court. Don't fight them out there. And yeah, I just think we should be grateful for the work that they're doing for us.
Fair enough. Well, I'll make sure to link your campaign website down below there. So people want to find out some last minute things. I know this will be cutting it a little close to that May primary there, but we'll make sure to get those resources out. And thank you so much for coming on.
Cool. Thanks, Tyler.
Thank you for listening to my interview with Christopher Boyd. I hope everyone found it enlightening and you learned more than you would have otherwise about Mr. Boyd and his bid for election to the Canyon County Prosecuting Attorney position. If there's someone you want me to interview, or you're someone that wants to come on for an interview, please reach out to us on X or Twitter, or email us at lyimedia@protonmail.com. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Godspeed.